Doing my vocal exercises.
Is this part of the bloopers?
Oh no, almost certainly not.
Okay.
Certainly not.
I see.
Hi, and welcome to Hypothetically Intentional, where we ask the question, what if we said intentions with everything we did? I'm your best friend, Andrew.
And I'm your not quite best friend, Michelle.
Oh, why aren't you quite their best friend?
Because if you're the best friend, then I'm the not quite best friend. Or the other best friend.
Yeah, one can have multiple best friends,
fair.
maybe. Questionably.
I mean, it probably rides a wave of ebb and flow, right? Like one's a best friend, like you're number one right now, and then you fall into number two, and then you're back up to number one, depending on what's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Okay, so what do we want to set our intention for today, or set as our intention today?
In the interest of the 10 rules for being human, I feel like the intention my intention for this podcast is to be open to the lessons presented to me.
To be open to the lessons presented. I like it. Okay.
You're on board with that one?
I'm on board.
All right. Because rule number 2, can we just dive right in?
Let's dive right in.
Rule number 2 says, and I'm going to read the whole rule because I feel like these rules are comprehensive and all the words are important. It says, You will be presented with lessons. You are enrolled in a full-time informal school called life. Each day in this school, you will have the opportunity to learn lessons. You may like the lessons or hate them, but you have designed them as part of your curriculum.
Interesting.
What do you think about that?
Well, I liked the idea of, seeing life as an opportunity for growth and learning. I think that's actually one of, I think that's one of my coping mechanisms, even in, difficult situations, is seeing what I can learn from it, which I think is a healthy coping mechanism when I apply it to myself, and a obnoxious and probably unhealthy coping mechanism when I try to apply it to other people. I learned that growing up.
Wait.
What?
How do you apply it to other people?
Well, I mean, telling other people to to learn from their mistakes, basically, or from what's happening to them, is, as it turns out, not a great way to interact with people. It doesn't go over very well, and it does not feel very good. I haven't done that in a long time, I don't think, but I think
it depends on delivery on that
one.
It
definitely depends on delivery. That is true.
I could see that being kind of pompous and
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It absolutely was at times, for sure. I try to steer away from that particular tactic now, but yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that, though, because I was going to ask you if you thought it was a healthy coping mechanism or an unhealthy one, because I hear the word coping mechanism and I typically go to unhealthy versus healthy, and I don't know why.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. I think we talk a lot more about unhealthy coping mechanisms. We usually don't use the word coping mechanism if it is more healthy.
Yeah, that's probably why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but what about you? What do you think about that lesson? What does it mean? Or lesson? Is that what it's called? The rule of life.
Rule 2.
Rule number 2.
I think it's interesting because I think over time I have become more inquisitive. Like when I'm in a struggle, it's comforting for me to ask what is the lesson here? Like, I'm guessing there's a lesson here, and what could that be? And it's interesting as I say that out loud, there's a part of me that goes, and sometimes that's just a way to avoid what's going on. Because I'm not actually reflecting on what the lesson might be. I'm just distracting myself from the pain of what's happening. You know?
Yeah.
But ultimately I will come around to the question of like, okay, like there has to be a lesson in this because otherwise what's the point? And so I have that like, well, I can always learn. I can always learn what not to do, what to do, who are my people, who aren't my people. You know, like no matter what the thing is, there's something to learn always, you know, for me. Like that's what I've just come to learn is that I can always learn something. I learned that I can always learn something. And not everyone has to make that choice. But for me, I actually enjoy looking for the opportunities to learn. But the statement that I'm sort of hanging on today and chewing on maybe a little differently is, you may like the lessons or hate them, but you have designed them as part of your curriculum. But you have designed them as part of your curriculum. I'm like, we're to that place where you're telling me that it's my choices that got me here. And I get that that's true. And I get that if I want things to change, I have to make different choices or at least be aware of my choices in perhaps a different way or have a different relationship to them. It just gets complicated for me.
Yeah, that was
But I also love the choice. I mean, I love that there's a choice, and I love that I have those choices, and I can make them. You started to say something, and I just kept talking. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, no, that was the part that I sort of hung up on too, or that like I didn't. I don't know how much I agree with that. Like I definitely agree that like our path through life is influenced by our own choices. I think that is a true statement, but I don't know, the lesson being of our own design or the curriculum of our own design, I don't know, that doesn't feel quite right to me because I don't know, I think of like the curriculum being, honestly, I don't even think of it as a curriculum because a curriculum implies that there is a lesson that you are supposed to learn. Right? There's something that you are being taught that you are supposed to get out of it. And I don't think
You don't think that's life?
I don't think of life as having particular lessons that you're supposed to get. I think there are myriad things that you could learn from several situations. But I guess I don't place intention behind it.
Oh, I do.
Oh, yeah.
I do. I feel like we're here to learn. I mean, in a million different, not just from a school standpoint. I mean, I think the way they're describing this is very like they're sticking it into like education, so to speak, just by the words they're using. But I don't think it's necessarily meant to be that. I think it's just a clever, poetic, so to speak, way of saying it, which is why like I'm coming to choices, but then like the statement, you may like the lessons or hate them, but you have designed them as part of your curriculum, to me says, I have choices and I must be accountable. And I think I avoided accountability for a really long time because I didn't like to look at my failures because I didn't see them as lessons. And now I don't see failures as failures. I see them as stepping stones to learn, grow, evolve, do better, be better. Again, don't super love that word, but to show up differently. Maybe I'll put it that way. To show up differently in a way that might bring me a smidge more joy, and if it brings me closer to my authenticity, that means that I don't know, I feel like when I'm in my authentic self, I'm in service. Like I show up better with other people, which means I help other people better. I don't know. Does that make sense? Did I just go off on a tangent a little bit?
Maybe, but that makes sense. Yeah.
Well, let's move on to rule 3 because it's a little bit related.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Is that okay?
Yes, absolutely.
There are no mistakes, only lessons. Growth is a process of experimentation, a series of trials, errors, and occasional victories. The failed experiments are as much a part of the process as the experiments that work.
Yeah, this feels very similar to the last one.
Yeah, it feels very similar to the last one. And when I finished reading that the second time, you know what went through my head? which you're not going to know, but the theme song to the Facts of Life. You take the good, you take the bad, you take them all, and there you have the facts of life. The facts of life. Do you know that
I have
show?
no idea what you're talking about.
I know, because you're not old. The Facts of Life was a show I used to watch as a kid, and the theme song started with, you take the good, you take the bad, you take them all, and there you have the facts of life. Rule number 3 feels very much like that statement in a nutshell.
Yeah, it still feels. I don't know. I don't know. These past couple of I guess this rule doesn't feel like it's really saying much. At least to me, like maybe you can help me with this, but I don't really get what it's saying. Like, good things will happen and bad things will happen. That seems pretty straightforward. Like that seems pretty like obvious. I don't know. What is your interpretation of this?
To me, it just says trial and error. Like some shit works, some shit doesn't, and don't stop. Just like the successes are going to be there, just like the failures are going to be there. They're not good, bad, or indifferent. They're just part of it. I guess that's how it, like we label mistakes, but are they really? Like, why is it a mistake?
I mean, I think there are definitely things that are pretty explicitly mistakes. Like,
fair, but I think we label a lot of things mistakes that wouldn't necessarily have to be called mistakes. And I think some people hang on said mistakes for so long that it takes up most of their life when they could, like, I don't know. I think it's interesting. I think the way this is worded with, talking about like it's a process of all these, basically it's saying all these failures and then occasional victories. It's like, well, that's kind of a shitty mindset. Like, can't there be more victories than there are failures? It depends on your definition of victory and failure, I guess.
Yeah. I almost wonder if this is sort of similar to like my like the hang up I had last week. Was it last week? Yeah, last week. On the article about grit, where it had this very sort of like binary definition of success, where it's either you succeed or you don't. Like, I feel like this is a similar like a similar simplification that I don't find particularly helpful, where labeling something as either a success or a failure is rarely actually a helpful way of looking at things. Like labels exist to be helpful, to help us categorize things in useful ways, and this particular type of label, good or bad, I think you've talked about that before, about how you don't love good or bad or better or worse, but like success or failure, like I don't know. I don't find these labels to be very helpful very often, because there's good and bad in just about everything. Like that's, I do not speak in absolutes very often, but I think it's fair to say that there are good and bad aspects in everything. Even this, like, maybe they're really, really small in comparison to one another, and maybe it's not always necessarily worth it to consider if like some things are pretty explicitly bad overall, but there are good parts to them, even if they're small and greatly overweight, and vice versa. Like, I don't know. I think I don't know. Seeing life as a bunch of F's and A's isn't super useful to me.
Well, and I don't know that I mean, I feel like you're still in the box of like lessons being like school education, like that kind of a thing, versus the school of life, which is a little different. Like A's and F's. I mean,
that was just an example. I was just trying to think of like something that is considered good or bad. I could have said like reds and greens was my first thought, but that didn't make a lot of sense.
I hear you. It's funny because as I'm looking at these rules, like the next few are still about lessons, and I find that interesting. So I want to keep going with these because I feel like you and I are on the same page in that we don't super love the labels of failure and victory, or because there's both in all things.
Yeah, at least not in the abstract. Like, I think when we have a specific situation, you can consider the context and think, is this a success or a failure? Sure, sometimes that's helpful, but like in the abstract, no, I don't find that super helpful to think about. So yeah, let's
So
move on.
Rule 4 says a lesson is repeated until learned. Lessons will be repeated to you in various forms until you have learned them. When you have learned them, you can then go on to the next lesson. I talk about this a little bit in like some of the choose yourself stuff that we do, in that like I find that patience is a big one for me. It's one of my big life lessons. I say that all the time. And every time I come around the spiral path to patience again, I have a different relationship to it. I'm not as triggered by it or annoyed by it. I'm definitely learning and growing within what patience looks like. And I still get the spiritual 2x4 is what I call it, when like, my guides just smack me in the face with a board and tell me, dude, you're still doing it. You're still doing the thing where you don't have patience. Stop it. Be patient. Trust the process. All those things. So I find this one a little bit funny, just because of like, being stuck in old patterns is kind of what I hear when I hear Rule 4. But I'm guessing you have some things to unpack or say about that one.
Well, yeah, I like I like your description of it as like a spiral. I know you've talked about this before off the air, but like so many like I lessons and like paths to recovery from difficult times, or like poor mental health, or like substance abuse even, or I mean even like if you want to go like really like sort of out to different topics, like even like getting better from getting sick, for example, like so many of these like paths of like getting better and improvement and healing are far from linear. I don't think you learn a lesson and then it's done and it's locked in and you'll never go back on that. I think it'll have its ups and downs. It's a up and down road, and maybe it trends upwards. Hopefully it trends upwards, but it's not always going to be going up. I know it's like something I've experienced, and I know for sure a lot of my friends have experienced, is when it is going down, even temporarily, it feels like you're just like losing all of the progress that you made. Like, what do you? Yeah,
I know
what
what
do you
you're
think
saying
about
about feeling like when you have already, like you thought you've already learned a lesson. This is a thing in healing, which is where I'm going when you're talking about feeling like you've already learned a lesson and then it comes back around and you feel like you're going backwards. That is not uncommon when you're doing deep work and self-healing, of like finding a thing that happened to you that then creates a loop in your head, and then you think you're over the loop, but then something triggers you in just a little different way, and then the loop comes back in just a little different way, and you're like, damn it, I thought I was done with that thing. And then you're like, but you're not done with that thing. So you still have more things to heal and unpack, and all of those things. So to me that feels similar, and I think that's kind of what you were saying. But the reality is it's not going backwards, it's just different.
Yeah.
And again, it's just different. And again, and just to keep, because I want this like learning and lesson thing to move through, because Rule 5 is also like, I don't know, there's 10 rules to me on some level are like, yeah, they make you think, but also some of them are they feel very repetitive to me, even though I know they're saying different things. Because this might, like, we can unpack like all these that we're talking about in this episode together, and it might lead you into whatever you're going to say next. It's short. It just says learning does not end. There is no part of life that does not contain lessons. If you are alive, there are lessons to be learned. Sure. You can find a lesson in anything if you want to.
I don't know. This is another one that doesn't feel like it's saying a lot to me. At least not that wasn't already said in this article.
That's where I go with these, with Rule 2, 3, 4, and 5 a little bit. I'm like, okay, we get it. There's lessons. Yep. There's lessons to be learned, and we can choose to believe that or not, but you're saying they're there. And it's like, yeah, I don't know how you can argue that, really. I mean, I think, isn't every experience an opportunity to learn something, even if you've done it over and over and over again? Isn't there something else that you could learn? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe not.
Yeah. Well, actually, the way you say that actually brings to mind to like like psychology and specifically like behavioral psychology, which examines behavior as pretty much all behavior as a result of learning, um, with a few exceptions. But largely, the idea is everything we do because at one point that behavior was reinforced. And everything we don't do because at one point that behavior was punished. And I think, I don't know, this is one of my favorite. I've taken a few psychology courses, and this is one of my favorite areas of psychology is behavioral psychology because it's such a like a simple principle where like you know that classic conditioning you or I guess it's operant conditioning where you do something and there's a consequence and that consequence will either be a reinforcer, something positive that makes you want to do it again, or it'll be a punishment, something that makes you not want to do it again. And uh, like that applies in literally every situation in our life where we do something that has a consequence. And don't get me wrong, I don't think behavioral psychology is like the end all be all to describing all human behavior. I think there's a lot more to it, and I think other perspectives like cognitive psychology, how we think about things and how we feel about things, and those are all very important pieces of it too. Um, so I don't think it's like the end all be all, but I do think that like the sort of the message there of learning being such a big part of our behavior and what we do and why we do what we do. Um, I think that's really cool. And it's also it's really actionable, because it's really hard to directly control like your thoughts and to a certain extent your behavior sometimes. But it's a lot easier to control sometimes, depending on your position in life, of course, but it's a lot easier to control your like the rewards that you give yourself and the punishments that you give yourself because we all do that, whether it's like you know like you're in your internal dialogue or something more tangible, but like I don't know, like I remember in high, like you know what, I shower before I eat breakfast because breakfast is the reward I give myself for showering. So that like
That's amazing.
I use that to because showering, I don't like showering. It just I'm just like standing and getting wet and whatever, and it's like it's cold to get in there, and it's just like spending time of my life not doing anything, and it's an important thing that I care about being clean, but I don't like the process of doing it. So in order to manipulate my own behavior towards showering, I give myself breakfast as a reward for doing it. um so like little things like that, like that's an example of maybe this is going a bit off track, but to sort of bring it back into to lessons, like um, I think that actually is a great example of creating your own lessons and teaching yourself, uh, in particular when there's like a disparity between your conscious thoughts and what you consciously care about and what you subconsciously like want, like what your body, your subconscious brain tells you it wants. Like if my subconscious brain doesn't want to shower, but my conscious brain wants me to shower, well then my conscious brain can take a bit more control by utilizing those lessons and teaching those lessons. And I think you can find those lessons elsewhere in life too. I don't know. That was me going off on that psychology tangent just because I like it so much. But I don't know. What do you think about that, Mom?
Yeah, as you were talking about that, I'm like there are so many if thens in what you were talking about, because I think about like my mindset, you know, before I did all the work. I don't know that I would have had a mindset that would have been willing to reward myself for anything, which maybe sounds really dark, but I mean there were times where my mindset wasn't in a place, or there were certain things where like it would trigger me so much that I couldn't get clarity in my mindset to give myself a reward or to shift out of it. And I just think it's like, isn't it amazing how complex like our mindset, how our brains work, how we navigate certain lessons, and some we're more open to than others. And I don't know. I mean, we could go down a whole psychology rabbit hole here, but I just think it's fascinating how powerful a simple thing as a shower and followed by breakfast can be, and how powerful it is when, I'm going to say, all the things, when we get to a place where many of the things that we don't like, we can find a reward for, versus everything being just so much harder than it has to be in a struggle. I think that's what I'm trying to say that's the easiest way for me to say what I was trying to say. And hopefully it made sense, and you know where I'm going with that, or what I mean by that. Did it make sense?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, finding ways to reward yourself for whatever lesson you want to teach yourself. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and also like creating positive connections with things that we deem negative, or just so that they don't have so much control over us that they stop us, right? Like if you hated showering to the point of like that brought you so much pain that like breakfast isn't enough to get you to do it, I mean, that would be trickier. Also, you might be the first person that I've ever talked to that doesn't like showering.
Wait, really?
I don't know.
There are times when if I'm like really hot and sweaty and then hopping in the shower real quick, but like even then.
See, and maybe it's just like so many people that I talk to. Like the shower for me is a place to go like cry. Like it's where I release my emotions. It's like I use Reiki in the shower to like wash away any energy that I'm hanging on to that's not for me, or just to move emotions through my body. Like the water is such a good representation of like just washing away the guck, like the mucky gucky that I just don't want. So, but I use it in that way. And then some of my friends also use like water in particular. It's not just a shower, right? It can be putting your feet in a stream, or it can be a lot of different things. But like when you're at home and you don't have access to nature, I find the shower to be like, that's my rivers and my streams that I can just like clear.
That's interesting. I've never thought of showers that way. I just don't like to be wet. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
I also, then when you said it's cold getting in, cold getting out, I'm like, oh, I relate to that. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So those rules like 2, 3, 4, 5 were all about lessons, and the next 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 are not. They're different. So it felt good to like lump all those together, because they felt to me much like to you. They were saying the same thing and just in a different way.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, thank you for bringing that article, Mom.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for digging into it with me.
Mm-hmm. So, if people want to get a hold of us or hear more about our show, how should they go about doing that?
If they want to actually contact us, they can send us an email to info@jaidewellness.com, JAIDEE wellness.com. They can go to our website, jaidewellness.com, or on Instagram, we're Jaide Studio, or on Facebook, we are Jaide Wellness. And if you want to follow me, my personal page on Instagram, I'm Michelle Albers, 2 A's, AALB as in boy, ERS. You can find my personal page on Facebook too. I'm all about the friends and the connections.
Oh yeah. Well, awesome. Yeah, go follow Mom. You might even occasionally, if you do, see a bit of me on there too. I'm not really active on any of those, but Mom sometimes posts pictures and whatnot, so.
I ask permission before I post the pictures.
Of course.
So I'm not just documenting my son on social media without his permission.
I'm getting doxxed by my mom.
We appreciate you being here with us. This is a magical time for me as a mom, and very soon we need to get Sir Jacob on here.
Yeah. That'd be great.
That'd be good. So we appreciate you being here. Have a great day. Bye. Be you every day.
Bye.